Music.
What is up, everyone? Welcome into the DNBA show. It's the DNVR Nuggets podcast. We're presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Make sure to use the code DNVR when you sign up and download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. We got a fun show planned today. It's myself, Harrison Wind, joined by Brendan Vogt, who's still in Brazil, who's still hanging in there. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good, man. Better than yesterday, and I'll tell you what. I might mess around and go outside tomorrow. No promises, but I might. Yeah, might get crazy. Let my hair down.
Are you allowed outdoors time? Do they give that to you in quarantine?
I've got a nice little balcony. I can read a book, but I've completed my recommended days, so we'll see. I might go to the beach tomorrow if I'm up to it.
They have those.
How are you,
man?
Brazil. They have lots of.
I'm great. Aside from last night, which we're gonna get into shortly.
Oh, yeah.
A forgettable loss, but we're going to lament it even more on today's show because I still feel like there's some stuff we need to talk about. I wasn't on the post-game show last night. I was at Ball Arena, of course, hopped on for the last segment, but there's some stuff I want to go over from last night's loss that we should talk about. We're also going to talk about the news of the day. I think Mike Singer reported today that Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray not going to Grand Rapids at this time. So we'll get into that. If that's concerning, if that's not concerning, what to take away from that report. And then finally, we're going to talk about what we're encouraged about, what we're discouraged about from the Nuggets at this point in the season. Just 20 some odd games left. We're really in the stretch run now. So we'll get into that. Let's dive a little into last night's game, though. Vogt, were you able to watch last night's game? What's your situation over there?
I am in a situation that a lot of local Coloradans are in. I am watching the games via Google, but I figured it out. I was able to watch that game, unfortunately, last night.
What were some of your big takeaways from it? Because I didn't talk to you at all last night. What did you think of this 119-107 loss to the OKC Thunder?
Well, I thought the Nuggets played really well. The starters, it was weird, man. I mean, they were bricking those threes. There was something about the way OKC that was defending that sort of begged those threes, but I also thought some of the guys that maybe have pushed the issue in the past when that approach doesn't work were reluctant to, sort of resigned to. I saw you framed it as they just found that front court too formidable to test, which I was laughing at as well. Can we get some free throws? I think you can go right at these guys, but alas.
Yeah. I guess a question I saw going around Twitter was like, was this loss indicative of some bigger issues that are facing the Nuggets at this point in time? And I think my answer to that would be no. Like, I don't think this loss was super concerning. I think it was kind of just a blip on the radar. Look, like you just said, one starter made a three-pointer last night. That was Aaron Gordon at the very, very end of the fourth quarter. And also, like you said, Oklahoma City was playing a defense that kind of sagged in the paint. They double and triple team Nikola Jokic all night. Thunder coach Mark Daigneault, I think that's how you say his name. He wasn't like hiding that game plan. He wasn't shy about that game plan. He said in his pregame comments, like, look, we're going to double team him all night. That's really the only hope we had. So Denver knew it was coming, and they just missed an incredible amount of threes. And look, on the season, the Nuggets are a good three-point shooting team. They're 13th in the league in three-point percentage. They average 35% three-point shooting as a team on the season. It's not as good as it would be with Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray in the lineup, but for all intents and purposes, I think the Nuggets are a pretty solid three-point shooting team this season. So I think it was a bit of an outlier. It was a historically bad three-point shooting night, but I would have liked to see the Nuggets just try to attack the rim a little more. Yeah. You mentioned my tweet, and it was, of course, sarcastic because this Oklahoma City front court, it's the worst in the league. I mean, Isaiah Roby played the game of his life last night. He was good. Yeah. Darius Bazley, Pokashevsky, guys on the bench that we've never heard of. This is, I think, easily the worst front court in the NBA, and Denver just settled the entire night. They played right into the Thunder's hands. So I thought the Nuggets could have done some other stuff, but overall, I think you got to say it was an outlier performance.
I think both of these things can be true, right? I mean, the shooting is undoubtedly an outlier performance. And in the first half, I didn't mind it. Like they were wide open looks. OKC
Yeah.
was daring them to take those shots. They're professionals. I mean, the answer really is to hit those shots. The second half is where I started to get exasperated. I wrote this in the grades. One guy in particular I looked at was Aaron Gordon, who shot 0 free throws. And I know he's trusting his shot, and I know it's getting better. But if there's one guy who could maybe turn down an open shot, which also was really an open lane, and maybe try to be aggressive with it, get to the rim or get to the line, I thought it could have been AG. And he chose to trust his shot, which that's great when it works out. Last night, I thought it was the wrong approach. Barton, hilariously, Barton led the team with 5 assists last night to 0 turnovers. There's a brief little moment where he took a different approach, then immediately dropped that and went back out beyond the perimeter looking for that 3. So some adjustments in the second half would have been nice. But we also can't kid ourselves. I think really a lot of the answer would have been hitting those shots. And it was kind of insane that they missed as many as they did. One last note, that Aaron Gordon 3, I think, pushed the over for the bettors. What a bad break.
I think it pushed to the over, or some people I was talking to, it just made the bet a push. Like,
what a crazy,
incredible.
That's the one he hits. And by the way, these line setters are just magicians, warlocks.
Yeah, they're pretty good. You mentioned Will Barton, and honestly, man, watching him last night go 0 of 9 from 3, it got to a point where it was awkward to watch. It was uncomfortable watching him because, I mean, he's obviously pressing. He is 1 away from the Nuggets all-time 3-point record. We know it's on his mind, and he's 0 of 14 since he's been 1 away from the record. He went 0 of 5 against
Nuggets
Portland.
Career.
Yeah, he went 0 of 5 against Portland, 0 of 9 last night from 3. And that's all been since he's got within 1 of the record. It's rough, man. Like, you can tell it's in his head, and it's something that if you put yourself in his shoes, it's probably hard to not think about. Like,
Sure.
all of his threes, especially in the second half, were just wide open. And they were all bricks. I think his last one didn't hit the side of the backboard. It was just brutal,
the one where
man.
he had the wide open kind of pull up and he hesitated, and you could just see the gears turning. I kind of want this. Well, I shouldn't force it. Oh, wait, I'm open. It's tough to watch. And it's no longer a feel-good moment. You know what I mean? He's going to get this thing, and we're going to be like, okay, cool. Glad that's over. It's kind of harder to celebrate than it felt a week ago.
I just want to say this is all my fault because I made a really, really cool graphic that I got really excited about using, and now I don't even know if we're going to put it out, and it makes me sad.
Kale,
So,
it's not your fault.
It's
not your fault because we did not release that graphic. It's Adam Mars's fault for that tweet at like 1:30 a.m. last night.
I knew it when he said
guaranteeing that Will Barton was going to make 2 threes last night. That is the most cursed tweet. I don't know. I don't even think we want to bring it up because it's that cursed.
He's gotten enough. Everyone's seen it. He's gotten it from every direction, so he knows. But that was hilarious. You know what was a bummer win too is there were some other things, like I mentioned the brief moment where Barton tried to do some other stuff, got things going with Jeff Green, found some teammates. He hits one of those threes, and then more importantly, if he just played defense in that fourth quarter, you might go, okay, that was rough, but he salvaged it. And instead, he was actually that was even tougher to watch than the shooting, was the way they just went after him in the fourth, and his spirits were just crushed. So they've needed more from him for a while. And I think there's no doubt that this record is not having a positive effect on his play right now.
Yeah, for sure. Another note I've got from last night, Nikola Jokic attempted 2 free throws. Like, I really don't want to be that guy, but
I know.
The guy shot the ball 17 times last night. I think 10 of those were in the paint. He attempted 2 free throws. It's crazy. But that was also just kind of, playing into OKC's game plan. They made it tough for him. They threw a lot of bodies at him. The Nuggets weren't getting a ton of calls, and the Thunder benefited. I mean, going back to the 3-point shooting really quickly, 46 threes, that's tied for the second most the Nuggets have ever attempted in a game.
Wow.
In franchise history.
Wow.
It's the second most threes ever in a game. And that's, like I said, against what I think is the worst front court starting and coming off the bench in the NBA. So the fact that Denver just didn't test those guys, I think is pretty inexcusable. And I think the final note I have, you could tell from the first possession of this game that it might be one of those weird nights. I was watching Michael Malone at the beginning of this game, man. He had a look on his face like, I should have called in sick today. Like, the Thunder got out to a 6-0 lead. I don't think he got out of his chair until like 4 or 5 minutes had passed in the game. He was really, really pissed. And this is the thing that, like, people get wrong about blaming Malone for a loss like this, or blaming him when the Nuggets don't come out with some fire and some spirit. It's not like Michael Malone didn't prepare his guys for this game. It's not like he didn't do the same thing he does before every game. And I've said this on the show before, but like, Malone is one of the most prepared coaches in the NBA. And what I mean by that is, when I talk to other like writers and other people around the league, they're always like, wow, the Nuggets looked really prepared for this defensive scheme, or they look really prepared for what this offense was doing. So it's not like Michael Malone told them to come out with no energy and no fight and no focus. They had the right game plan. They just didn't execute. And at the very beginning of the game, the starters, for a second straight game, the starters were also really bad against Portland, but for a second straight game, the starters just didn't bring it. So I was looking at Michael Malone last night, and I honestly felt a little bad for him at the very beginning of the game.
And I do think, I mean, how many years has he been in Denver now? Eventually, no matter what he's doing right or wrong, I think things do start to go in one ear and out the other. And that's not to mean that it's necessarily time for a change. It's just Malone can yell and yell and yell. Maybe it has to come from other voices, and you miss Jamal in moments like those for sure. These are one of the areas in which we could see Jokic go, or would like to see him grow. Call a player huddle. You know what I mean? Wake each other up, talk to each other. There's none of that, right? And so just a lot of like blank faces, guys in shock. And even Jokic, who, listen, I understand when you're getting triple teamed, your teammates literally cannot buy a bucket, and you're getting fouled and they're not calling it. Like, eventually you're going to just pull yourself out to the perimeter and try something different. But also, when he did force the issue, foulers or not, he did still score 22 points on 17 shots. Like, he could have pressed through. There was that fourth quarter stretch where he came in alongside the bench shooters who were hot, and he just relegated himself to the perimeter, and it just felt like it got to him. You know what I mean? When maybe he could have, we saw it in the Clippers game, could he have imposed his will a little more? So weird night. And to me, it was where the sort of on-court leadership that's discussed at times with this team really reared its head. Someone say something, you know? But
right.
Alas.
Yeah. Say something. You mentioned Yoke. He came in at the end, had a really bad turnover. He had some rough turnovers last night. 6 of them in total, only 4 assists, one of his lowest assist games on the year. And I mean, the Nuggets didn't hit shots, so you didn't really expect that to be higher. I do have a question for you. At the end of the game, Michael Malone rides his bench because that second unit played really, really well throughout most of this game. They really actually kept the Nuggets in this game, but he rides his second unit late into the fourth quarter, then goes back to Jokic, then eventually goes back to the rest of the starters. Was that the right or the wrong decision, in your opinion? Because after the game, Malone said, when I asked him, if I had to do it all over again, I probably would have left the bench in there.
Sure. I mean, the funny thing about these conversations, man, is how long ago, or not that long ago, was it where he went with the bench and we were like, dude, you got to bring the starters back in, you know? Right. And it's like, we are chasing, like, at a certain point, it shouldn't be a cardinal sin to play your starters against the OKC Thunder. Like, maybe the players should have stepped up. He's right, I think, to some extent. Like, the bench earned that opportunity. They did give up a little mini run and had been on the court for quite some time when he pulled him. So I didn't feel like it was egregious. A couple of things. I mean, Austin Rivers should have closed over Will Barton. Barton just that was painfully obvious. Not forget hindsight, just as he was being attacked over and over, you go, man, they're missing their best perimeter defender who was bringing it that night. And then Bones over Monte. I mean, Bones was phenomenal, but given the way Monte's played of late, is it really unreasonable that Malone tried to go back to him in the fourth? The bench might have saved the day. And in hindsight, I guess we can all say it would have been worth a shot. But I just want to point out that it's like, man, why did you put the starters back in against the Thunder? It's like, well, your starter should be able to close the game. It's on them too.
Yeah, I think I agree. Look, if the bench stays in, do they win the game? I don't know. Maybe not, because like you said, they were already kind of losing control of it when he did go back to the starters. I think you obviously put Jokic in. I mean, that's
Sure.
an easy call for me. And Cousins, I feel like he was definitely at his limit in terms of fatigue, which I think Malone referenced after the game too. I think he was talking about Cousins at least.
He was playing so hard. He was playing so hard in those 15 minutes.
He was
inspiring, really.
It really was. And then I think Austin Rivers, that's the easy inclusion there. And I want to talk about Austin Rivers a little later in the show, because I think he's kind of emerging here. But he was really good last night again. And you talk about perimeter defense. I mean, he's really the one nugget that gave Denver anything in terms of perimeter defense last night. So I kind of want to end it there. I think this is honestly maybe the worst Nuggets loss I've ever seen. And I've seen some bad ones, man. I mean, I watched the Nuggets get swept by the Cavaliers 2 years ago. Like the NBA worst Cleveland Cavaliers. I mean, I saw the Ish Smith game. I saw the Nuggets blow a 20-plus point lead to the Pelicans multiple times, I feel like. I've seen some bad ones, but just with the quality of player that the Thunder had last night.
I know.
This could be the worst.
And it was consequential, right? I mean, look at it. Is a critical stretch. They were rolling. You got to keep it going. The Wolves have not fallen off. You're that close to Dallas. So there's always like overreactions and underreactions to these types of losses or wins against these bad teams. But this one wasn't just that was annoying. It was consequential. So I think you're right. I would say, just in terms of, is there something we can take away from this? Nothing new, right? The perimeter defense, we knew about that. How teams are going to try to play Jokic. I mean, OKC came out with a playoff approach, right? For a team that's tanking. They came out trying to win that game like their lives depended on it. We've seen that approach against Jokic. We've also seen the Nuggets figure that out over time. So it did some bad habits rear their heads? For sure. But again, do not overlook the shooting aspect of this, which is just insanely unfortunate.
Yeah. All right, let's hit a break. On the other side, news of the day, Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray not going to Grand Rapids. We'll also talk about some other news involving a new contract for Nikola Jokic. Ooh. That's exciting. And then finally we're going to get into not yet, apparently. Not yet.
Okay.
Then we're also going to get into what we're encouraged about, what we're discouraged about with the Nuggets at this point in the season. Am I doing the reads? I can do them. Guys, Ivanka TV, if you haven't watched the Nuggets and Avalanche this season, if you have Comcast and haven't been able to watch them, Ivanka TV is the savior. Like this is an incredible option that people in Denver have to watch the Nuggets if they haven't been able to this season. And a lot of people have been replying to me, tweeting at me that they've signed up for Ivanka TV and have gotten it. They're loving it. They're really enjoying it. It's just $25 a month. Go to evoca.tv/DNVR. That's evoca.tv/DNVR. $25 a month. Plus you get a free receiver, no contracts, no hidden fees. This $25 per month price, it's locked in for 2 years. So they can't raise your price, jack it up like cable companies sometimes like to do every year or so. $25 a month for 2 years, and you get altitude, plus a lot of other channels as well. Available in Denver, Colorado Springs, Phoenix, Boise, and Twin Falls, Idaho. evoca.tv/DNVR. And also at DraftKings this week, guys, when Covington and Masvidal step into the octagon this Saturday at UFC 272, DraftKings Sportsbook the official sports betting partner of the UFC, has a knockout offer for new customers. Bet just $1 on the main event, get $100 in free bets no matter what. First round knockout, you get paid off that. Majority draw, you get paid off of that. Double knockout, resulting in a no contest ruling, you get paid off of that as well. You get $100 in free bets no matter what the outcome is. So download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code DNVR. Bet just $1 on UFC 272, the main event. Get $100 in free bets no matter what happens in the fight. That's code DNVR this Saturday at DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of UFC. Must be 21 or older. Colorado only. New customers only. Minimum $5 deposit. Restrictions apply. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details. Gambling problem, 1-800-522-4700. Also want to throw in a DraftKings pick of the week here.
Nice.
Let me check out these lines tonight. Let me check these out here. Do we think the Lakers are going to beat the Clippers tonight?
No, I really don't. I really don't. I don't.
They're only a 2.5-point underdog. I'm going to go Clippers money line -140 to beat the Lakers tonight. That game is probably on ESPN, I'm guessing, or TNT. It's Thursday. Yeah, that's going to be my DraftKings pick of the week. Clippers over the Lakers tonight. Hopefully that hits. All right, back here on the DNVR Nuggets podcast, the DNBA show, Harrison Wind and Brendan Vogt. I want to get to this Jokic news real quick, Kale, before we go to the Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray news. Guys, Vogt, Nikola Jokic expected to sign a supermax contract extension with the Denver Nuggets. This is going to be, Vogt, the largest contract in NBA history.
Until it isn't. But that's good for him. He's earned it and worth every penny. And I don't think anyone would disagree.
So he can sign the supermax this offseason, which would begin in 2023, projected to be worth between $253 million and $270 million over 5 years. That's a lot of horses. Or he could wait until 2023, take another year to evaluate his options and still re-sign for the same terms. According to his agent, he's expected to sign it. It sounds like this coming summer. I would think that's pretty much a lock to happen. I've been saying, forever that I would be surprised if Nikola Jokic ever played for another NBA team. I would definitely be surprised if he left the Nuggets in his prime. I think this is just, another indicator that this guy's not going anywhere.
Yeah, I've never had any doubt. I would be shocked. I know that can be potentially naive in this NBA ecosystem, but Jokic is not a product of that ecosystem by any means. I think he's content in Denver. I think he's expressed wanting to finish the job with his teammates, with the org who's put trust in him. And an element that I've always thought is important in this, does he strike you as a guy who wants to start over as a terms of assimilating to a new city and culture? I don't get that impression. So happy to see it. I'm sure it's going to happen. And you know what? Just build the Crockies own the Elitch Gardens, right? So just build a horse track and let's just keep him happy forever. And he never has
horse
to
track in the middle of downtown Denver.
Why not? Why not?
Yeah, man. I don't think he's a guy who wants to start over. I also think, just from what I know about Nikola Jokic and how he looks at things, I just think, and my read on it is, he's somebody who is incredibly loyal, wants to win it and wants to do it and wants to be with the people who have been with him for a while and have helped get him to this point. And he just wants to finish the job, and I think he definitely wants to do that here. And I don't think, going somewhere else to win a championship is going to be appealing to him. I really don't. And it's weird because I think there's only a couple NBA players that you can probably say this for, but he's just a different breed. And I think it comes from his background and it comes from his principles and just how he lives his life and goes about his daily routine. I just think he thinks his purpose is to win it with the Nuggets and win it with this staff and this strength staff. And the couple guys who have been here with him for a while, and that's what he's going to do. If it doesn't happen here, it doesn't happen here. But I just think that's his focus, or at least that's my read on it.
I mean, he's said it so many times, right? That he wants that sort of Tim Duncan path, that dirt path, the getting it done, where the groundwork was laid. I believe it. The only thing, and not with this contract, I am not trying to stir stuff up, but the only thing with at any point in his career, talking about this with our Serbian buddies on Monday, you could see him eventually out of his prime, like, hey, Boban, where you at? Luka, where you at? Is there something we can do here, right? But I think that, again, that would be after the prime, after the title, or maybe, hopefully, ideally, getting them to come here. So this contract to me was never in doubt, and I'm excited to see it come to fruition.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's get to the other news of the day. Mike Singer at Denver Post reported that no, Michael Porter Jr. will not go to Grand Rapids and practice with the Grand Rapids Gold this week. That's something that I tweeted yesterday. It seemed like the Nuggets were definitely planning on having happened. Mike also said that Jamal Murray was going to go to Grand Rapids.
Yeah.
Which
what?
I didn't know about until today either. And, just checking with some people, it doesn't seem like that was something that was going to happen until yesterday. They started talking about sending Jamal there as well. Is this something or nothing? Because I feel like this was the logical next step. Talking about Porter, I didn't think Jamal was as close, but talking about Porter, the logical next step in him coming back, you practice with the G League team, you scrimmage, maybe you play a G League game, then you really start talking about returning to the Nuggets lineup. Concerned? Not concerned? Do you have a read on this at all?
I feel like, well, shout out to Singer for the report, but I also feel like we've got a burying the lead case on our hands. Jamal Murray was going to go to Grand Rapids. I feel like that to me is good news. That to me indicates he was closer than the way Groucho Malone has been talking about it. I know why he does it, but I'm just kidding with that nickname, Michael. I know why he does that stuff, but the tempering of the expectations and the wet blanket stuff. Maybe it sounds like Murray was closer than we thought.
For one second on that, I feel really bad for coaches that are put in this situation because, of course, you've got to temper expectations and deny stuff. I mean, Steve Nash, when the Nets came to Denver, 2 days before they traded James Harden, said, yes, we're not trading James Harden. I mean, coaches just have to carry water for their organizations in times like this, and I feel bad for them.
That's true. So I'm sorry, Michael. But that is exciting. And so then also Singer was explicit in that report to say there were no setbacks. They just sort of rethought the logistics of the scenario. So putting those things together, I go, well, if you say it's not a setback, I'm not going to sweat it. And if you tell me Jamal Murray was in the mix, I'm actually more excited. This is encouraging news to me, Wind.
The Jamal Murray part, definitely encouraging. I mean, my sense even now is he's definitely still behind Porter in terms of when they could come back. But, just talking to people around the team, that there's still hope that both of them do play this season and Jamal gets back this season. The way it was described to me, them not going to Grand Rapids was a change of heart. I just don't know if they wanted to go there. And
no, it's because IT's not there. It's because Mike is not going to get to see IT, and so he changed his mind.
Did Michael Porter Jr. not want to get shown up by Nick Stauskas on the practice court? That's, I think, the conspiracy we have to start talking about. Nick Stauskas, if you guys didn't know, if you're not staying up to date on the Grand Rapids Gold, just had 100 points over his last 2 games. I think scored 57 and then 43 in his last 2 games that happened on a back-to-back. So in 2 days, he scored 100 points. But anyways, yeah, I just feel like what it came down to is they just didn't want to go for a day and then have to fly back. It's only 33 degrees in Grand Rapids, though. A balmy 33 degrees there today. I don't see why it's so bad.
And I guess, Singer outlined that logistically you could do all of this in Denver too, which maybe seemed like something I know. I don't know if I bought that part, because also why would you not have realized that a week ago So, I mean, maybe they just didn't want to go, but the no setback thing is just sort of what I'm hanging my hat on. I'm going to try not to trip up on it too much. Are the Nuggets going to practice?
That's the thing.
They probably just are. Dude, they're probably practicing and just not telling us, but whatever. We'll find out.
So they had a practice Tuesday, and then after the loss last night, Michael Malone said, I could tell at practice that we weren't going to come out with, the right mindset in the first quarter. He said they had a really bad practice Tuesday. So maybe they won't practice again. But even at whatever the Nuggets are calling a practice now, it's not like they're playing 5-on-5 full contact. They can't risk an injury. They don't have 100% of their bodies anyway. The way it was described to me was that, look, when they go to Grand Rapids, they have the bodies. There's a full roster up there. They can play 5-on-5, and the Nuggets can go to Grand Rapids and be like, okay, we want you to play, 4 10-minute quarters with officials and make this like an actual scrimmage type thing. I don't think you can do that same thing in Denver. So, I bet they can get up and down a little bit with assistant coaches and, player development guys and whoever else wants to play. But I don't know if it's quite the same.
Or maybe if they feel they're good enough, like healthy enough that they're just, let's get into the NBA stuff. Let's forego the G League. I mean, it's confusing, but the most confusing part to me is just, where did this Jamal Murray thing come from? So yeah. I still kind of see it as good news because of that factor. That's where
maybe Jamal's being a little secretive because these last couple of home games, he hasn't warmed up on the main court, before the game, which he had been doing really for the last couple of months. After all the guys who were playing that night go through their warm up, when there's like 30 minutes before the game starts, Jamal Murray and Michael Porter Jr. are usually out there. I haven't seen them over the last couple of games before the last couple of games. Now that's maybe nothing. Maybe Jamal's like working out upstairs, working out way before, doesn't want to do it in front of everybody. I could understand that if he actually is getting closer, but that's just something I've observed.
I don't know, man. Maybe he's closer than they're letting on. That's kind of how I felt. And so, I don't want to put any sort of, I see this question from Kyle. There's at no point, I guess I'm putting a speculative timetable on it now, but God, I feel a week ago, there were some really depressing anecdotes coming out about the perspective on Jamal returning. And to me, this one was a little bit of like, hey, just a reminder, this is still very much on the table. So I'll choose to take it as a positive, man.
How many games would you like to see Jamal Murray or Michael Porter Jr. play before the playoffs? Because I think what a lot of people don't get with injuries is that going from 0 to the playoffs is such a ridiculous ramp up that I don't think you can really ask somebody to do that.
Sure.
Like, you've got to get some regular season games under your belt before you go into a playoff environment, which is just like so much more intense. Everybody's playing way harder, especially at the end of the season. A lot of teams just really start to pack it in and just try not to get injured before the playoffs, or you're playing teams that are just out of it. Do you have a number in mind of games you'd like to see those guys play maybe before they suit up in the playoffs?
Yeah, really haters suggest 5 to 10. I kind of have it more like 8 to 10, I guess. And it's not that I think he's all of a sudden going to look great at game 8. We've talked so much about the mental aspect of this, asking your body to do what it used to be able to do. He's just got to get out on the court and go through that process, I just think, right? Just enough reps of, by the time the playoffs come around, he trusts that thing, right? He trusts his body to at least try to do some of the things he wants to do. Porter, I'm a little less – I think Porter's ready to go. I think you want to get him in game shape up and down the court. But the way he's going to be used, the value he brings to this team, I just think he can do it tomorrow, which is take jump shots. So getting him in shape and conditioning is important. 10 games, I think, would be cool. 10 or more would be awesome. But, I've seen a lot of why rush these guys back. I don't think that's happening. I think you can take it that if they come back, it's because they're ready. And lost in the Porter discussion, is that was a relatively routine surgery to clean up some discomfort. Now, it's terrifying because it's his third back surgery, and that risk of re-injury has skyrocketed. But you know what, man? That's just as true next week as it is next year. That's the hand they've been dealt with Porter. And the reality is, if he's cleared to play, then he's good to go and play him. So I think, Porter, it's less of a concern for me. Jamal, I'd like to see him get close to 10 games in if possible.
I think this is a good point here. I definitely think them coming back could kind of uplift the entire team, just lift everybody's spirits and whatnot. I definitely think that could be a thing. And yeah, I'm with you. At least on the offensive end, fitting in Michael Porter Jr. is going to be easier, I think, potentially than bringing Jamal Murray back, because like you said, you can just stand in the corner and shoot 40% from three.
That's what Jeff's doing without the 40% part.
Right. And they definitely would have won that game against the Thunder last night. My concern with Porter, and it's actually a pretty big concern, is defensively and just the trust level between him and Michael Malone. Because, I mean, we know how much Michael Porter struggled defensively over his career. He's going to be, probably less in tune when he comes back, and just as he's going to maybe look as green defensively when he comes back as he ever has, just because he's been off for so long. I'm just concerned about the level that he'll be able to get to defensively, but that's what you'll have to find out about him in the regular season. So I'm thinking, 8 to 10 games would be great. 5 to 8 would be okay, but definitely going to have to see him out there a little bit. And yeah, when it comes to Jamal, they're definitely not rushing him back. Markelle Fultz just came back from an ACL. Looks good. He also was off for 13 months.
Yeah.
So Jamal's sitting at under 11 months right now. I think March 12th will be 11 months exactly since the surgery. So he's still definitely on the early side of the timetable. So yeah, we'll see. And with Porter coming back, I don't know this. This is just me speculating. I think Porter definitely wants to come back to kind of prove to everybody that, like, I'm not this guy who's just going to be injured and on the shelf, and like these back surgeries aren't going to define me. They have to this point. I mean, he's had 3 surgeries in 5 years, but I think he wants to get back to prove to himself and to prove to others that, I can't survive in this league. I can't survive. So we'll see.
And the last sort of taste we have in our mouths from watching him play, it was so bad. And he knows, we know he's not that bad. And it goes to this regular season and the playoffs. And there's plenty of room for growth. But I think Michael would like to remind us all what he can do. And I'm eager for that reminder as well, because they are better with Porter in there than Jeff for all the things Jeff has done well and can do, and the way he understands the game. First of all, worth pointing out, Jeff Green, not exactly a great defender in his own right. Porter is bigger, more athletic, better rebounder, better shooter. So they're better with him in the roster. There's no doubt. And so I think he's eager, but I don't think is he too eager? I mean, he's either healthy or he's not, and I think he's ready to go. And so I'm not concerned about the rushing aspect. I'm excited to see that eventual return.
Yeah, this is a good question from Jen. Does MPJ immediately replace Jeff with the starters? That's a good question. I don't know the answer. I would think he comes off the bench at first, see how it goes, see how he looks playing little spurts of minutes, and then you make a decision. If he looks like his old self, yes, you put him back in the starting lineup. But I think initially maybe he comes off the bench. You mentioned Jeff Green, and listeners of this podcast know I've been hitting this all season. Looking at Jeff Green's rebounding numbers is usually a pretty good indicator of like how locked into a game he is. He had 0 rebounds in 21 minutes last night.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's an immediate upgrade in some of those aspects. It really is. But the reason I find Jen's question so interesting, and George Karl talked about this on the old Keeping It 1000 podcast, the bench is rolling do you have any interest in breaking that up right now? And so obviously the long-term prospects of getting Porter and Murray healthy are more important, but you're also still trying to win games. And so does it make more sense to just put Porter with the starters and let the bench stay as they are? And what does that mean for Jeff Green? These questions, I think, don't necessarily have easy answers. So it's definitely something I have circled as far as important questions when he does return.
Definitely. Breckenridge Brewery, guys, the official beer of DNVR. They've got seltzers. Breck Brew is in the seltzer game. If you stop into the DNVR bar, we've got seltzers just chilling in the fridge, ready for you guys. Tons of great flavors. I would recommend the peach, but the seltzers are awesome. Definitely, they have vaulted to the top of my seltzer power rankings. They taste really good. So check those out. If you're in the area, stop into the DNVR bar. If you are not in the area, go to the Breck Brew website, check out the Breck Brew beer locator. That's how you're going to be able to find out where you can get Breck Brew closest to you, where you can get Breck Brew seltzers. And like I said, if you're in the area, check out the DNVR bar. We've got tons of Breck Brew on tap. We've got Breck Brew seltzers. So check it out. If you're in Denver, Corner Colfax and York, Breckenridge Brewery, the official beer of DNVR. All right, back here on the DNVR Nuggets podcast, presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Use the code DNVR when you sign up and download the DraftKings Sportsbook app. We're in the stretch run now. Vogt. Let's go over what we're encouraged or maybe discouraged about with the Nuggets at this point. You want to go first?
Sure. Can I take the obvious one?
Go for it.
The bench. I like the way the bench has been playing, which was just the biggest weakness of this team and is currently looking like one of their bigger strengths until the starters wake up. This Boogie signing has been everything we could have hoped for. JaMychal Green has rediscovered his utility on this roster. Bryn Forbes looks like a great trade. Bones Highland looks like a good pick. I mean, these are all – Austin Rivers is – I mean, if you really think about how he's played and what he's given them on a minimum deal, I mean, that value's been through the roof. So I love the way they're playing. I love the way they play together right now against these at least bad to mediocre bench units. And I love the idea of 3-4 of those guys coming in an 8-9-man rotation. I think they can help. And, you know, I said this before, but we can breathe again about that group. And that feels like a luxury in and of itself.
Yeah, you actually feel a little confident, or at least I do, when the bench comes on the floor now.
Yeah.
And for the first half of the season, everybody was holding their breath. Everybody was thinking whenever that group got on the floor, it was worst case scenario. Like you thought the opponent was going to go on a 10-0 run every single time. And for good reason, because that happened a lot. But now you feel confident, man. You feel confident that that group can, you know, not only just post like a 0+-, but that they can outscore an opponent's bench.
Right.
And I'm going to go a step further and talk about one guy that's really impressed me on the bench. Look, Bryn Forbes has been great. Bones Highland's been really good. He was great last night. DeMarcus Cousins, of course. JaMychal Green's playing the best he has all season. But Austin Rivers, to me, continues to just look like such a good fit with this roster. And I tweeted this out last night, but I could see a scenario where he's the Nuggets' first guard off the bench in the playoffs. And not counting a Jamal Murray return, because if he comes back and he starts, then Monte Morris is the first guard in the game. But if just not counting that for a second, Austin Rivers, I could see becoming the Nuggets' sixth man in the playoffs. And the biggest reason why is defensively. Mm-hmm. And you saw it last night. Denver could not keep SGA out of the paint once again. We've seen that every time the Nuggets have played the Thunder this season. And he burnt Aaron Gordon. He burnt Will Barton. And there are a couple plays in the second half where Austin Rivers fared really well defensively on him. And I know Michael Malone. I know how much he values defense, specifically point of attack defense in the playoffs. And I just think Austin Rivers is a guy that the Nuggets are going to rely on at times in a postseason environment. Am I crazy?
No, you're dead on. And they also don't really have much of a choice. I loved the way that group defended in that short stretch post-trade last year. But two of these guys are going to be coming back off major injuries. Do we think that they're necessarily going to solve the perimeter defense problem? Probably not right away. Definitely not right away, and probably not across the playoffs. So if you want to have a guy that can lead the team in minutes off the bench, that can close with the starters, and again, we thought he should have last night, he's your guy. And then don't forget what he can do offensively, as rare as it is. He won a playoff game last year, and he started in that series. So I think he's earned Malone's trust, and also particularly with some of the questions that have surrounded him throughout his career. This year, he's had to go through it. You're starting. You're with the bench. You're out of the rotation. Here we go again from the top. He stayed ready, and in the end, he's earned this spot. And I think you're dead on that he's among, if not the most important bench player right now. And look, if Barton's going to be playing like that come playoff time, I think you close Rivers over him. So there are going to be moments where that happens, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And Rivers, he's shooting the three better as of late. I think he's at like 40% from three over his last 5 games. He's streaky from the 3-point line, of course, but as of late, he's been hitting. And he's also been getting to the rim a little more. He's shooting one of the best percentages of his career at the rim this season. And it's a pretty good finisher in there. I mean, he's had a couple of these nice like Euro step walks to the rim over the last couple of games and finished at the hoop. And he's cutting out the jab steps. He's getting the ball moving more. So I'm just really encouraged about what I'm seeing with Austin Rivers. And I'm seeing some comments about Rivers versus Forbes. I'm worried about Bryn Forbes defensively in the playoffs. Like, he is an incredible shooter. One of the best, just catch and shoot guys in the NBA, and doesn't need a ton of room to get off a three either. But I just think when push comes to shove, you're going to want Austin's defense out there.
I also think we're talking in sort of about the ideal kind of Nuggets team, right? With how this works out. Jamal's back, Porter's back. They look okay. They look good even. In that case, Rivers' defense may prove to be more valuable than getting Forbes' shooting in there. I understood why Forbes was on the court last night. He was the only guy who could hit a perimeter shot. That seemed kind of important. But just generally across a playoff series, I think what Rivers can do might be a little more important relative to what the Nuggets starters can't do right now. And that is the perimeter defense, which is among my top concerns, man, heading into that playoffs. I don't think it's going to magically look great. So,
for sure. Yeah, I mean, Forbes has been great. He's been exactly what the Nuggets hoped he'd be so far. He's really been exactly what they could have imagined. Okay, here's something I'm discouraged about. You ready for this?
Yeah.
The schedule. I was looking at the Nuggets schedule just before we popped on this show. I didn't even realize this. Did you know the Nuggets are about to play 4 games in 5 days?
I saw that. Yeah, we got a makeup game in there, right?
It's because of the makeup game against the Warriors, but still, they're about to play 4 games in 5 days. They play Houston, of course, on Friday. And if you expand it, it's 5 games in 7 days. But after Houston on Friday, they play the Pelicans on Sunday, the Warriors on Monday, then they're off. Then they play at the Kings and then home against the Warriors again. So 2 back-to-backs with 1 off day in between. The first one's a home and home back-to-back. The second one, they're on the road and then come back to play the Warriors on the second night of a back-to-back. I've never seen this on a Nuggets schedule. This has been something teams have played this season. 4 games in 5 nights. Like, it's just the makeup era, the COVID era that we're in. Sometimes this pops up on the schedule, apparently, but this is concerning to me. I mean, 4 games in 5 days is absolutely brutal.
Yeah. Has anyone told Draymond Green how this one shook out? Must be. Yeah. It's brutal, man. The only thing I'm clinging to is, God, how bad did the Nuggets look off 2 days rest? And maybe if they're rolling, they can keep it rolling. There's no time for a bad practice or overthinking it or whatever.
Just don't practice. Maybe that's the solution here.
Yes, yeah. Vladimir, I think there's an answer to your question. Try to win more of the games than you lose. Not trying to be a dick, but that's kind of how it goes. Look, the Wolves have a nice little easy stretch coming up, and this is a very concerning 5-game stretch for the Nuggets. The Kings, I feel okay about. The way those games go is kind of a misnomer. Like the Nuggets actually win those games more than the way folk like you and I talk about it or portray it. But those Golden State games are tough. The Pelicans games get scary. This is why dropping that Thunder game was so consequential, man. That was it was supposed to be a gimme, and in the end, it's a demoralizing loss. And now they're going to have to trudge through this stretch of schedule. It's not a free pass to the avoiding the play in here. They're going to have to scrap and earn it for sure.
You bring up the Pelicans, or not the Pelicans, the Timberwolves, who are right behind the Nuggets in the standings. Denver 6th, Minnesota 7th. Denver is 2.5 games up on Minnesota. But if you look at Minnesota's schedule, like you just mentioned, listen to their next 4 games.
I don't want to.
At Oklahoma City versus Portland at Oklahoma City.
Oh, get the fuck out of here.
So, I mean, maybe the Thunder have found something here. I don't think so, but maybe they've really found something and they're able to hang with Minnesota. But the Timberwolves have 2 dates with the Thunder, 2 dates with Portland. Both those Portland games are at home. 3 of those 4 are at home. That could very well be 4 straight wins for them. So it's going to be tough. And yeah, it hurts dropping that Thunder game. The Nuggets have just won 6 in a row. They've won 8 of their last 10. But the thing is, everybody above them in the standings, except the Warriors, has also won 8 of their last 10. So Denver hasn't really moved up in this stretch, even though they've been really hot. But yeah, you've got to win every game you can.
It's crazy. It's crazy. And along those lines, one of the things I am discouraged about, the starters, that winning streak was fun, but for 2-3 games, they didn't, I guess 3, if you're talking about the loss too, they didn't look very good, and the bench kind of saved them. Now, I think ultimately I have confidence in them. Jokic will have a reminder game here sooner or later. Oh, yeah, that's right. He is the best player in the world. That will help. But they haven't been grooving lately, and I think that's why there was some urgency in the way Malone's been coaching, been talking to those guys, despite that win streak, trying to wake them up. And they didn't do it on the court. So, yeah, the starters are going to need to be better. I think, whatever Jokic has, I think, enjoyed being a pass-first superstar, great on his own terms. This stretch might command something else from him here. He might have to dig deep for that Clippers-esque effort. Barton's going to need to be better. Aaron Gordon's going to need to be better. So I am discouraged with the play of the starters. However, reinforcements on the way, ? I mean, there's something to be encouraged about as well. Not just Michael Porter, but maybe Jamal Murray, as Singer talked about today, closer to a return than we thought.
Yeah, something else I'm discouraged about, just Aaron Gordon overall. Did not look great last night. He's had one really good game after the All-Star break against the Kings, but other than that, don't think he's been great. And defensively, maybe it's okay that he's kind of waiting to ramp it up to that all-NBA defense that we know he can play, or hopefully he's waiting to ramp it up because the defender he was at the beginning of the season, I think it's easy to forget, like he was so good defensively early this season. That was one of the big storylines from the first month of the year. Like Aaron Gordon is an elite defender. I want to believe that he still has that in him and he can flip the switch in the playoffs, but I just want to see it maybe 1 or 2 times over the remainder of the regular season. Maybe he's waiting for like a big matchup, a big one-on-one matchup for that to happen. But I just want to see him have a big standout defensive game before the playoffs.
Yeah, we talked about what hope is there of that defense looking different. Well, maybe when the starters come back and Aaron Gordon's offensive role changes, so does his responsibility and his approach on the other end. I still buy it. I still buy that he can because we saw him look incredible. But he needs to be a little better right now, and he's had a great season. But, maybe more aggressive around the rim, maybe more active off ball and better defensively. I will say, I think they can do it. I think we'll see the starters look good again sooner rather than later, and they've looked great for the better part of the season. So I'm very encouraged by the bench. I trust that the starters can get it together, but it needs to be said that they need to go do it now.
Yeah. I think they will. I wouldn't be surprised if they came out and looked great against the Rockets. I think the starters can definitely flip the switch, but we'll see. The last thing I've got that I'm encouraged about is just Bones Highland. He was great last night. 19 points, 5 of 6 from 3, 4 assists, just 1 turnover. Look, man, if you would have told me over the summer that Nuggets are going to have a rookie, and that rookie is going to be a point guard, and that point guard is going to be in the rotation firmly, and that rookie point guard under Michael Malone, Michael Malone's the coach here, under Michael Malone is going to launch 30-footers on the regular, I would have been like, you're out of your mind. Like, you're absolutely crazy. Because
dude, some of those shots last night.
He shot the 1-3 he missed was super deep. That was like a 34-footer.
It's just such a stark contrast to the Michael Porter Jr. experience, where we saw him take 1-3 that was 5'2", one shot that was 5'2" long out, and he got benched immediately, right?
That's true. That did get him benched, I think.
Yeah, like that would get him benched immediately. And Bones Highland is pulling up from the logo with 20 seconds left on the shot clock, and Malone's like, shoot, baby, shoot. Like, it's such a weird contrast to the MPJ experience. It's so odd.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, if you would have told me what Bones Highland is doing, I would have said you're absolutely crazy, because, like, a rookie has never had this free reign under Michael Malone. And I think it's the right call. I think you got to know the player that you're coaching, and Bones Highland flourishes when he's just allowed to play free and to play his game and to be himself. Now, look, is he going to have that same leash in the playoffs? Definitely not. I don't think so, at least. But I'm happy that Malone is letting him be Bones. He's letting Bones be Bones.
Me too. And they needed it last night. At a certain point, too, you go, okay, they're hitting threes. You get a long leash because no one could buy one. But he looked good. He looked confident. I still like him much more as a catch and shoot guy than an off the dribble guy. But he hit him last night. So I think he looks really good. He's a big part of why the bench looks good. They're just playing so hard. They seem to understand the moment, the urgency of those minutes right now. And you just hope that starts to rub off on the starters. One more thing I'm encouraged by, Harrison. I was looking at the roster today. Nikola Jokic still on the team. And I think that's going to factor into how they finish down the stretch. Am I wrong?
That's a very encouraging aspect. You've still got the best player in the league. Although my read on him getting a second straight MVP, I'm not feeling as confident about that now. Yeah, it seems like that's kind of fading. It feels like the MVP has been awarded. But anyways, yes, they still have Nikola Jokic. They're still going to be good. I think they keep the 6. I think they get this together. Look, they just won 6 in a row. Like we said, they dropped a game to the Thunder where they had a ridiculously bad off shooting night that they've only had a couple times this season. They're good. And I think they've got a great opportunity for a get-right game against the Rockets, who are probably going to deploy a very similar game plan to what the Thunder did. So it's just going to be about if the Nuggets can hit a couple more wide-open threes.
And you'd like to think that they will got all the misses out of the way. And hopefully it's just sooner or later that reminder was going to come to them. Hey, you guys have to play better. You can't walk into this. And so, all right, let's just the positive, the optimist perspective. They got that reminder now. Here we go. And they're good enough for this. I'm with you. I think they hang on to the 6.
All right. Thanks for hanging out with us today. I think that's all the time we got. I feel like we covered a lot today, but appreciate you guys chilling. Appreciate you watching. If you're watching live on YouTube, if you're listening in podcast form, leave us a 5-star review. Let's get the 5-star reviews popping again. So if you have a second, hit that 5 stars. Help us out there. That'd be a huge help. If you're watching on YouTube, like I said, hit the subscribe button. Throw us a like as well before you get out of here. Nuggets play the Rockets Friday. I'll be in the lounge, pregame, postgame hosting. So we'll see what happens, but I think it's a great opportunity for a get right game. Talk to you guys then.
Love you, chat.